So information being everything, and people's data is extremely important. Looking at, say, an organisation like the NHS, which is probably the classic example of big data. I mean, going forward, is there any time when we could actually say that a patient's data records are going to be completely safe, or is that always going to be kind of up for grabs, and is it always going to depend on the people involved in that organisation, people being the main weakness, I guess?
Yeah, well, I think that the end of the day, it doesn't matter. Data is data, whether it's data or big data. If an attacker has got enough motive to want to come after you because he thinks you've got something that's valuable, they will, and they've still got to go through the same techniques. And then it's down to how hard you did or didn't make it for them to get in. If you're still relying on firewalls, for example, and just endpoint antivirus, then it's probably going to be quite easy for them to get into your environment, take a lot of records before you notice. A lot of the tools that you use to try and do forensics or spot things like that going on just don't alert you in time. You know, there's products like security information event management products or log collection products. They're good when they're useful when you've found out that you've been breached, but actually by the time you find out, if you didn't detect it early enough, the damage is already done, and you spend a long time trying to reverse engineer the problem. So if you're still relying on those sort of technologies and you're not changing your mindset to this threat-centric model, you're going to lose a lot of records. I think that's the thing. So whether it's the NHS or whether it's a large commercial enterprise, you've still got lots of data that's very valuable. So it's the same techniques that you're using to protect it either way.
So going forward, I mean, how do you see the security environment or the threat environment changing over, say, the next 18 to 3 years? 18 months to 3 years.
Well, we've certainly looking back over that period, we've seen it change massively. So I don't think we're in any doubt that it's going to continue to change at a similar kind of rate. Back to this point about it being an ecosystem. Now, there's so much sharing of knowledge in the criminal underworld and so much value associated now with, I said, these kind of different individuals who spend their time researching the next big way that's going to enable them to be able to run some code on a machine that you thought was protected because it had this, that and the other security sitting in front of it. So I think, and we're back to the other thing we were saying about mobile devices. I think we're going to see a lot more focus on those over this 18-month, 3-year period, as the value of those sending high value text messages, premium rate text messages, starts to wane, and there's more value seen in targeting mobiles for other reasons. I think there's going to be some significant changes in the threat landscape over that period.
I mean, do you think the new Internet Protocol version 6 is going to have any major serious security implications?
I think it's going to be more of the same, to be honest. I mean, there's some security built into it that's potentially makes the protocol itself a bit more resilient. But a lot of the time, that's not what the attackers are exploiting. No. They're not necessarily exploiting a security hole in IPv4. So, obviously, the biggest change in IPv6 is things like the Internet of Things, as we've got more and more sensors and devices that were previously either not even enabled at all, and now intelligent devices, and they're connected to the internet and all the benefits that brings. And we have to start to apply the same models that we've just been talking about to exactly that environment. IPv6 is just really an enabler to get all those devices connected, just because of the sheer volume of IP addresses that you now have. Obviously, IPv4 didn't really enable that. We already ran out as we were, without trying to think that your fridge and your lighting and your air conditioning and the lock on your front door and all those things are now going to be connected to the internet. So I can't see that IPv6 really is going to change a lot. I mean, it's been around for long enough now, and turned on in devices, later versions of Windows, later versions of Mac OS X. So it's already brought its potential for challenges.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we always talk about is visibility. You've got to be able to see what's going on in your environment. So if you're already in the model where you have good visibility of what's in your environment, you already know that you've got devices that are using IPv6. You can start to do something about protecting yourself against them. But
so if you were to give one piece of security advice to a business organisation, what do you think it would be?
Well, I think the main thing is to change. You've got to change your thinking. You can't rely on firewalls and antivirusing or signature-based technologies are at the point where the attackers are innovating so fast that they're so far behind the curve now that the vulnerability gap is so big that the risk is just too large now to carry on in that model. You need to change to this threat-centric model where you're thinking more about how the attackers are behaving and is there something happening in my environment that looks like I've been compromised. To me, that's the biggest change. Kind of one of the phrases that's kind of been coined in the industry that generically sort of talks about that technology now is breach detection systems. That kind of sums it up. Breach detection, you're detecting that you've been breached, but it's the change in thinking is acknowledging that you will get breached. If you're an organisation that has something that's of value to someone, at the end of the day, everybody's connected these days, so every organisation probably is appealing to someone in the world if they turn their mind to them. Everyone's a potential target, and it used to be everyone thought, oh, it's just large enterprises are the target because they've got lots of high value stuff, but that's changing rapidly. Initially, it was small organisations that were suppliers to large organisations were getting attacked because they were another way into those large organisations. They have a more trusted status within the large organisation, and some of that still goes on. The target attack was via a heating ventilation contractor, but as time moves on, those smaller organisations become targets in themselves as well for the value of what they own. Have some brilliant intellectual property that might be of value to someone. So I think you've just got to assume, whoever you are, that you might be targeted, and you need to change the way you're approaching security in your environment.
One favourite attack seems to be denial of service attacks.
Yeah.
I mean, how can SMEs defend themselves against those best? Because obviously, that seems to be quite a popular way of getting at the smaller organisations at the moment.
You have to rely on your service provider, to be honest. That would be my advice, is the most sensible way that you can approach it. Because at the end of the day, by the time the traffic's reached your internet connection, there's nothing you can do on your side. You aren't going to have a big enough pipe or enough backup connections to be able to be resilient to it. You need to rely on a service provider that says they've got enough of a distributed presence that they can see the attack as it starts to launch and actually block it in a distributed way before it gets to your specific connection.